Legislative Committee. For our first order of business, I want to entertain a motion to allow Commissioner Robert Walker to participate in this meeting by Zoom.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. And welcome, Commissioner Walker.
Thank you.
Good to
Glad I
see
can join.
Good
I'm
to
still in DC, by the way. What was only supposed to be,
DC feels like that pretty much every day these days.
yeah,
So, good, well, thank you for taking the time and being able to join us. Do we have any public comment to our action item for today, which is the approval of the June 4th, 2025 meeting minutes from, okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
all right.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have our state legislative update with Ron Pierce joining us. Good morning, Ron.
Pretty brief because since our last meeting, I talked about some of the legislation. The biggest thing that's happened since our last meeting was we have finally concluded the 2025 legislative session. As you all know, we went 105 days versus 60 days. But everything is done. The governor signed the budget on June 30th. Did about $590 million in vetoes. The good news is none of the vetoes had any really direct impact on us. Last piece of legislation was done on July 3rd. So truly the 2025 session is behind us and we're starting to look forward. Let me bring up, I think, a couple things to your attention. Number one, the last time we talked from a funding standpoint, the House and Senate had taken much different positions from a transit standpoint. The Senate was lower, the House was higher, had the more traditional numbers for transit. The good news is they went to the House position on just about all of those areas. So we ended up in really good shape from a funding standpoint as it relates to the final budget that was approved. There was one issue, there was in the finance and tax package they passed relating to dock stamp collection and on how those dollars can be used. They're actually rolling back, which we kind of expected. Brad and I've shared with you before about they're trying to impact some of the New Start funding program in Tallahassee. They've actually rolled back how dock stamps can be used. So it's going to impact the New Starts program in DOT's budget by about 85%. That potentially does have an impact on us. In fact, Darden, Brad and I have a meeting later this morning to talk about the impact of that and more importantly, maybe how we can offset that from a local government standpoint. So we're looking at some things there. Our last meeting we mentioned on House Bill 1525, which had the fix for the Rule 1490, which gives Brad and his team a little bit more flexibility on using not just transportation disadvantage dollars, but general DOT dollars on working with TNCs and other providers. That was signed into law, so that is good news. Brad, I think I'm glad to report that for the first time in a decade, we can leave that off our legislative agenda and say that was accomplished. We don't have to worry about Rule 1490 for a while. So that was a big win. That was House Bill 1525, and that was signed by the governor since our last meeting. One other bill I'll mention, Senate Bill 700, which did a bunch of different things, but one thing that it did do in there was it preempts local government's ability from a permitting of local of electric charging stations for vehicles. Basically, they give that power back to the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services and or state law. Doesn't have a whole lot of impact on us, but I wanted to make sure you all were aware of that, and more importantly, Brad and the team was aware of that as well. As I said, we just wrapped up. I mean, literally, the last bill was signed into law on July 3rd. Budget was done on June 30th, but we're already looking ahead. The committee week schedule's already been outlined for the upcoming session, which again starts on January the 13th. We have committee weeks 2 in October, the week of October the 6th and 13th. We have 2 committee weeks in November, the weeks of November 3rd and November 17th. And then also 2 committee weeks in December, the weeks of December 3rd and December the 10th. I'll get that out. We can get that on everybody's radar. And I'll start working with Brad on what it looks like from a going up and I think meeting with the delegation in Tallahassee, which we probably want to do starting as early as, if not the October committee weeks, possibly November. Just to remind everybody, traditionally what we've been doing is typically have Brad and a couple board members come up twice a year, depending on what the agenda looks like. 2 years ago, it was kind of a unique situation. There was a lot more things that had a direct impact on PSDA, so we were up to a little bit more last year, a little bit more reserved, which is nice. But we'll probably do 2 trips. We typically do one during a committee week. We do one during session as well. Again, session starts January the 13th, ends around March the 13th. So hopefully we'll be done. Fingers crossed we don't go extended session or anything. We should be done within the 60-day period, so we'll be done by mid-March. So let me close with this, and I'll take some questions. And I know I talk fast. Is we probably want to start thinking about a legislative agenda. So Brad, would encourage probably you and me and your team to sit down and maybe come back, if not sometime in August, but maybe September, on what a legislative agenda could look like. I know there's a couple of issues you and I've kind of talked about, and we may want to look at maybe some funding opportunities as well. So, perfect world, I'd like to have maybe this committee and the board approve what a legislative agenda may look like in September. That way we can hit the ground running in October with committee week. So I will stop there. Brad, am I missing anything? And more importantly, is there any questions or comments from the committee?
All right, thank you. Brad, did you have anything to add to that before we go to committee members?
No, thank you, Ron, and I think that sounds like a good plan, that we would, we will come up with a draft legislative agenda with some items, let's see, come to your next meeting, your August meeting, so then you can vote on it in your September meeting. And in time for the committee weeks. Cycles right through.
Okay, great, so we'll add that will be the main agenda item for this committee for next month.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Great, all right, committee members, any questions, comments?
Oh,
Brad?
and I can just add a little bit to what Ron said about the doc stamp funding. I guess according what I heard Whit Blanton say was that doc stamp funding it was funding that was called New Start matching funds that the state provided. For a long time, the state has committed to funding if a transit project, these are bigger transit projects like Sunrunner in our case, it's the only one in the Tampa Bay, but there's a lot of them in South Florida and Central Florida. If they get federal New Starts funding, then the state will match it 25%, and then the locals have to come up with the other 25%. That's how those projects get built. And they take a long time to develop. The legislature eliminate or reduce the doc stamps or eliminated them. So the funding is dramatically reduced. What the DOT folks have said is that they all of the projects that are in the pipeline or in design and such are funded, and that there's no cut to existing funding. But I guess it'll just be either a very complicated accounting exercise by the DOT or just a slower stream of funding in the future. I haven't heard that they've changed the parameters of the program where they would provide 25% of the project, 25%, and then the locals provide 25%, but that remains to be seen. But the dollars that they use to fund that program are now dramatically cut. So we'll just have to see. That doesn't have any direct effect on our ongoing state funding though.
Okay.
We'll see.
Commissioner Fig Sanders.
Thank you, and thank you, Ron, for that presentation. And I know that we have been grateful that we did not have any major cuts this budget season. But my question to you is, as we are looking to put together a legislative agenda, we have to have had some of the direct services of people that we deal with impacted by the vetoes and those cuts. And so as an organization, I'm not sure if we've addressed what some of those changes of partners that we generally deal with that were impacted, how we are going to address that. So moving into trying to do our agenda, would you give us any advice or direction as to what you possibly are hearing that may happen next year that we need to adequately prepare for?
That's a really good question, and I would tell you, I think we should probably focus not necessarily on what was vetoed or the level of spending, but I think the concern and issues for us going into the 2026 session will be what do they do with property taxes? There's a consistent drumbeat on they want to do property tax reform. You heard the governor, I know the governor came out at the signing of the budget, and one of the questions asked was, well, what do you think they should do from a property tax standpoint? Because he vetoed, by the way, the House and Senate tucked in $1 million to work with OPAGA on studying on what are options they could look at from a select committee standpoint on property tax reform. But more importantly, what would those impacts be on local government and state government, if state government was gonna have to try to backfill some of those dollars. The governor's recommendation was, well, he believes that if you're a homesteaded property in the state of Florida, you shouldn't have to pay property taxes. Well, and I think he didn't say this, and I think no matter what they would do is from a property tax standpoint, they would probably hold the education portion of it harmless, because you can't, I think everybody would agree, they don't want to impact education. The problem is the other 70% that's going to local government, a large portion of that, depending what local government you are, like I don't know what it is in St. Petersburg, but I know that I've heard Hillsborough, I think 60% of all their funds go to public safety. I think St. Petersburg's above that. I think Pinellas is above that. So if they do anything from a property tax reform standpoint, we just really need to be kind of watching that and see, A, what impact they have on our government partners, number one. And then number two is, if they get into any additional discussions about the use of and or making anything that would go back to the voters to be renewed every year on any type of discretionary sales tax, forest development tax dollars, or any collections that special districts or agencies like us have the ability to collect, we do really need to keep a very close eye on that. So the select committee will start meeting again in October. I will definitely provide regular updates to Brad and the team, and also to this committee on what that may look like moving forward. But I think that's something we need to keep a very close eye on, because that would have an impact potentially on us from a budget standpoint.
Okay, thank you for that. So Brad, have we identified any agencies, organizations that we currently deal with that were impacted, that we had a relationship with, that we probably need to revisit what that looks like?
Well, we've heard from some of the partners that we work with for the commission with the funds that we provide to them with the Commission for Transportation Disadvantage, that they might have been affected. And then of course, we're trying to renegotiate our various UPass agreements with a bunch of different entities, including Pinellas County Schools, and they and Eckerd College as well, that are maybe gonna be challenged because of loss of funding, so reduction of funding.
Okay, so.
We do have agreements with both Pinellas County Schools and Eckerd that might, we'll just have to see if those.
But at least we've looked into how that may impact us as an organization.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, great. Thank you, Ron.
Madam Chair, Harry asked me just to tell you, there's been nothing going on in DC. It's very, very quiet there. He's just gonna wave his time this morning, and we can probably conclude the meeting.
If only.
If only.
That's awesome, Ron. Thank you. All right, well, on that note, we will move from the state to the federal legislative
Thanks, Ron.
update. with Harry Glenn.
And good morning, Commissioners. Thanks, Ron, for that. I'm surprised you're not calling from Alligator Alcatraz down there. So, it was great to be with the board at the end of June. So I don't have a whole lot new to report since then, but as you all are probably were following, just before the 4th of July, the House and the Senate both approved and sent to the President signing the law, the One Big Beautiful Bill, the Budget Reconciliation Act. That was the main legislative action for the first 6 months of this Congress. Just for those of you who are serving in other bodies too, I just want to clarify, we're getting a lot of questions, there's a lot of confusion about the Budget Reconciliation Bill. It is a separate piece of legislation and a separate legislative process entirely from the normal appropriations and budgeting cycle that Congress goes through. We've been getting calls ever since the bill became law and through the weekend, and even I got 2 this morning already saying, was my project in there? What's happened to the funding level? That is, the appropriations process and the Congress is just getting started. It's separate from the budget reconciliation. In fact, the only major transportation touch point in the budget reconciliation bill was some significant new funding for the FAA to modernize the air traffic control system and hire more air traffic controllers. There was a provision in the House bill that would have sought to put a tax on an annual fee, I guess instead of a tax, an annual fee on electric vehicles to try and help replenish the highway trust fund, which is declining because more cars are electric and not paying gas tax, but that provision was dropped in the Senate and ultimately not included in the final bill. So budget reconciliation law doesn't impact you all in any way that I can see. That said, as I mentioned, the appropriations process, the House started working on some appropriations bills. They have to do 12 regular appropriations bills every year. They did 5 in the weeks before the 4th of July recess. Brad, they're scheduled to consider the transportation appropriations bill a week from tomorrow in the transportation subcommittee, and then in the full committee on Friday. That's where we see all of the funding for the Federal Transit Administration and other ferry boat programs and other programs that are of interest to you. So we'll continue to monitor that. Just as a reminder, the President's budget request, while providing an almost 25% cut in discretionary non-defense spending, did a pretty good job for transit programs. In fact, APTA, your trade association, put out a statement in May when he issued his budget request, and he put in another one in June when he issued more details, saluting the president for his investment in transit and transportation programs. So I think transit will do pretty well in the process next week. The Senate is starting to mark up their appropriations bills. They have their own process. They're working on 3 this week, and with more to follow in July. They have not scheduled the transportation bill yet over there, but we'll continue to monitor that. On the Senate side too, we still have the nomination for the FTA administrator, Mark, out of the Senate Banking Committee for consideration by the full Senate, but that he has not been scheduled for his confirmation vote yet. They have about 150 nominees that are scheduled for consideration by the Senate. Takes a long time, and so they're working through that backlog, but we don't have a date yet for his confirmation. Brad, I sent you this morning, there's a letter that came out last week from Secretary Duffy to all US DOT grantees. You probably received it, or somebody in your organization probably received it. It was kind of a strange letter. It basically reaffirmed that the Trump administration is not going to enforce a number of requirements from the Biden administration on things including DEI, some other environmental policies for the Inflation Reduction Act and all of that. It just says that. It reminds people executive orders that the president has issued on those matters. It doesn't really ask you to do anything. It doesn't. It's a strange thought, Brad, but I sent it to you this morning just so you and your team will have it just to review. I don't think that impacts you in any way. I guess the last thing, Brad, is I know you're coming up next week, and I saw your email the other day. Got a confirmation this morning that we have a meeting set up with Congressman David Rouser, who's, I think, Chair Driscoll's met him. He's the chair of the Highway and Transit Subcommittee on the House Transportation Committee. He's going to lead the rewrite for the highway and transit authorization programs next year. We're going to meet with him. Brad, the only time they can do it is at 9:45. on the morning of the 17th. The House is finishing up with votes that morning, and he's flying out that afternoon for something in North Carolina. So I think the folks you were gonna bring in from Dallas were only available in the afternoon, so I don't know if you wanna reach back out to them or not, but right now we have him for 9:45. Waiting to hear back from the chairman of the full committee, Sam Graves, to see what his availability is. And then we've also made a request, Brad, to see Congressman Larson from the state of Washington. He's the ferry boat champion in Congress. Jackie, who you know from the Transportation Committee staff, has recommended that he take the meeting with you to talk about ferry boats. So we're working to do that on also on Friday morning or Thursday morning. So I'll let you know we hear about that. Things are a little slow scheduling wise because the House was called back from their June recess week last week to vote on the reconciliation bill. Actually, the leadership in the House gave the House this week off. So the Senate's in session this week, not the House, and that's kind of slowed down a little bit of the scheduling, Brad, because the members are out of town this week. But we'll get a good schedule set up for you for next Thursday. I think that's all I have. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you. Brad, do you have anything to add before we go to committee members?
Well, there's two things related to what Harry said. Thank you, Harry. One, I heard that future FTA Administrator Molinaro is actually working at FTA under some kind of like Elon Musk like temporary basis. He has the same deal where he can work there for 120 days or something while he waits the Senate confirmation. But he's in the building. I heard that. And I think I can't remember if you were copied, Harry, on the emails about that Uber is joining us. And I sent an email to Lyft because Uber didn't think it was a problem. They'll have Lyft folks there too, but I don't think I've gotten any email response back from Lyft. But I'll double up on Lyft too. But it would be the meetings with Congressman Rouser and Graves would be okay to have Uber and Lyft there, I would think.
It would be good, yeah, I think it'd be great. I will, Brad, I'll respond to that email so that Uber sees the meeting time for next Thursday with Congressman Rouser.
Okay.
All right, committee members?
Nope, I don't have it.
Commissioner Albritton?
Yeah, I heard something on the news about the gig workers and Uber, they're trying to rewrite the, I guess, the employment, that they I guess the drivers for Uber and Lyft are gonna fall under a different employment contract. And I wanted to know how that if that would affect us, because I know that, that they were looking for insurance or something, saying that we couldn't use them because they weren't insured.
Yeah, that's the issue that we're
That's-
gonna talk to the committees about is, at the very end of the Biden administration, they passed a regulation that would ban us from using Uber and Lyft because
Right.
they're not drug tested.
Right, oh,
They're not
drug
tested.
tested, that's right.
Changing a policy that had allowed, if the customer chose the company, not PSDA, but the customer, which is what we do, then they are exempted from the drug testing requirements, just like taxis have been since the 1990s.
Okay,
And we're gonna go talk to the committee. I have heard from Uber, which they have heard that the Trump administration folks are not going to implement that regulation. But that they're just going to kind of leave the status quo and not implement the regulation that the Biden administration tried to put in.
okay,
So we're kind of in limbo. So these meetings next week that Harry's setting up are really to try to, hopefully Congress in the next bill when they vote on it in 26 or later, will put some legislation in,
yeah,
just kind of updating the regulations sort of permanently that Uber and Lyft permitted transportation sources, options for people.
I think they're rewriting the whole, I guess, I don't know what you would call it, but relationship between, Uber and the workers, the drivers.
Okay.
Because I heard that on the news last night, as a matter of fact, they're calling them gig workers.
Yeah.
And so they're rewriting it because they say it's antiquated, it was back in the 70s it was written or whatever, and that may be part of it.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, Brad, I think, Commissioner, you did hear it correct, there's been some legislative activity, bills introduced in, I think in this case it's the Senate. Senator Cassidy from Louisiana introduced a bill, Senator Scott from South Carolina is working on a bill, and it goes broader than just Uber and Lyft drivers. They consider it, they're working on a bill now to finding a way to provide health insurance and other benefits to independent contractors.
Yeah.
So these are folks that are not employees of a company or an organization, but they're independent contractors. But because they're independent contractors, the companies are not required to, and there are other standards that set up to provide benefits and health insurance and other things to these workers. And so I think because so many people now are going in, as you said, the gig economy and are independent contractors, they're trying to work on legislation to somehow codify that companies that employ these independent contractors can provide them health insurance, and it sets standards and all this. I don't know enough about it, just kind of popping out. This has always been an issue, I think, Brad, for Uber and Lyft drivers, that they're some of the gig employees that they have not been recipients of benefits. It's separate from the issue, the taxi cab exemption issue that Brad was talking about. I don't know that this would impact any of your use of Uber and Lyft services, Brad, this whole independent contractor thing. In fact, if they pass a bill like that, it'd probably make more people interested in becoming Uber and Lyft drivers because they could qualify for health insurance, 401ks, and other things they're currently not eligible for. So we'll continue to monitor that, Commissioner, and let you know what happens, but it is a separate issue from the one we've been working on the taxi cab exemption.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, that was one of the, when we were in DC in May for the APTA Legislative Conference, that was one of the main topics that we had as we made the rounds on Capitol Hill. And every office that we talked to, every member of Congress and their staff all seem to agree with us that there should be
Rewrite.
an allowance for them to have that exemption.
I think it's fairly not controversial.
Right.
We'll just have to see. Yeah. And I was planning, as Harry said, I have a meeting, a committee meeting on Friday there in DC. So the CEO of Dallas, Texas, who they also have a bunch of Uber and Lyft partnerships. They have a whole app and everything down in Dallas. She was gonna be there, so she was gonna come with us to these meetings, try to show that it's a nationwide issue. And she can't. I don't know. We'll see.
Is that the same woman that was there when we were there from Uber?
Yeah, Nadine Lee is her name. She's the CEO of Dallas, and she'll be there. And then it was the Uber lobbyists in DC,
That was
all from Florida. They all Ron introduced me to all of them, and then now they're in DC for Uber, so they're going to join us too.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else?
No, that's it, thank you.
Any other committee member questions, comments? All right, so,
Question real quick.
yes, Commissioner Walker.
Yeah, Harry, you mentioned there were 4 appropriations that had passed before recess. Which were those 4?
It was the defense bill, the military construction and veterans affairs bill, the legislative branch bill, the trying to remember, agriculture bill, and I guess there were just 4. I'm sorry, there were only 4. They had a 5th one scheduled, but they pulled it before the recess, so there were 4 so far.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
All right, Brad?
one final thing, some good news, and I was just reminded by Commissioner Walker's Zoom background there. Harry, do you wanna give Commissioner Walker the good news about what you found out from Congresswoman
As part
Luna?
of the appropriations process, PSTA has two projects that are pending before the committee. One is for ferry boat, the new ferry boat dock in downtown St. Petersburg, and the other, Congresswoman Luna has requested funding for the ferry dock infrastructure in Dunedin. So hopefully we'll get some good news on that next week when the House marks up the bill. Thank you, Brad, sorry I forgot that.
That's fantastic, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate the support on that. Would you remind me again which bill, that particular appropriation, the ferry dock?
It's in the House Transportation Appropriations Bill. It's the bill that funds all of the FTA programs, including the ferry boat program. And so it's an earmark. I believe she asked for $2.5 million, Brad. She has not listed on her website. There was an oversight by her staff. That's why there was some confusion. But we confirmed last week that with her chief of staff that she did submit that request to the committee.
That's fantastic. And then just kind of a follow-on question, and this not really entirely related to this, but we are allowed to use the term earmark now again?
I guess they call them congressionally directed projects. That's the technical, the earmark kind of gets negative connotation. So if you want maybe a congressionally directed project with congressionally directed spending,
Yeah.
that's another way to use it. So maybe that's a better way to go than earmark.
Well, yeah, when I was governmental affairs with my last company, earmark was a four-letter word.
So that's why they've renamed them. But anyway, we should see that list sometime middle to late next week.
Okay,
To include in the bill.
thank you.
Okay, and that's one, Harry, you said that they're taking up next Wednesday?
Next Thursday.
Thursday.
But they usually publish the list of projects that were included in the bill on the day before the markup, so that would be, hopefully we'll see the list on Wednesday.
Okay. And then, Brad, you're going tomorrow, is your meeting with, and just, you guys had mentioned Sam Graves earlier, but I think it was actually Rick Larson that you're meeting with?
Well, I think we're trying to
Or
get with
both? Are you meeting with both?
both, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
He's
excellent.
trying to get meetings with both of them, yeah.
Yeah, well, so Sam Graves is the chair of the House Transportation Infrastructure Services Committee. Rick Larson is, do you call him like the ranking member?
Right, he's the ranking Democrat member, the senior Democrat member on the committee.
Yeah,
That's the full committee, and then David Rouster, who we do have the meeting set up with, is the chairman of the subcommittee on highways and transit.
yeah, it's, and so you guys are having those meetings before next Thursday?
It would be Thursday, yeah,
We're
and
gonna
I
have the
think
meetings next
Brad,
Thursday.
Larson spoke to your, he spoke to your APTA conference, I believe, in May when you were up, so.
Yes, he spoke during that one, and he also spoke during the National League of Cities Legislative Conference in March. But being able to hear him, both times, he actually is very very enthusiastic about waterborne transportation and that's why these two ferry projects for us should be of great interest
Yeah.
to him. And then another message that he really drives home is to think about, when you're talking about projects, think of it as a construction project and not so much like if you're talking about electrification. Well, the project that you're doing a lot of times involves construction and the infrastructure that goes with that. And he said focusing on that part of it and the jobs that come with it and all of that is always like a good idea. And what else? Well, he, just from the area that he's from, he really understands the importance of ferry service and how that can be, a real economic development asset for communities. So I'm excited that you've got meetings with him and Graves.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that, I mean, one or the other would be great, but both, and they go on and on about how they get along so well too. They,
Good.
yeah, I guess they, did they come in at the same time, Harry?
I don't know that I'm not sure, I can check on that, but I don't
Yeah.
know. They've been around a long time,
They
so
have.
they've worked well together on the committee for a number of years, so, yeah, they're both good guys.
Yeah, so I just see a lot of opportunity that comes with, you know, having those meetings and the relationships that Harry has.
Yeah.
It's a great combo. I can't wait to hear how it goes. And I'll be watching next week. Do we have I'm sorry, did you have anything else, Harry, that you wanted to bring up that you're hearing up there?
I'm sorry, any, to bring up here or in the meetings on Thursday?
Here today.
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you so much, Brad. Did you have any final?
I did have one other topic that's not directly related to a federal appropriation, but it's related to an existing appropriation. I just wanted to give the committee, while I had you, to give you an update with Al about our Clearwater Transit Center, but other than,
Okay. Then we'll wrap up the
Yeah.
federal section with, I would love to know when that list comes out, if it comes out on Wednesday. If you guys can keep us posted.
yeah,
Yeah, I would look forward to that as well.
yeah,
We will let you know as soon as we see it.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thanks, Harry. It's always good to see you.
Good to see you all, thank you.
Thank you, bye-bye.
All right, so we'll go to other business and
Well, before we go to other business real quick, so Brad, that was one of the notes that I had was for that list. Would you be willing to send that to the
Yeah, I'm
committee?
gonna work with Harry on Wednesday.
Okay, so you'll just,
I'll forward it to you.
okay, thank you.
I'll forward it to the whole PSA board
okay,
Thank you.
excellent, thanks.
once we get the list.
Okay,
But it sounds very positive that at least the Congresswoman Luna put in funding for the Dunedin
mhm,
Marina, and then Congresswoman Castor's putting a congressionally designated spending for the St. Petersburg Marina, or the St. Petersburg Ferry Terminal
the ferry.
there.
Mhm.
If it's okay, on other business, we related to, I said that the transit center, as you know, has been out to bid now since the beginning of June. And yesterday and Monday, we got requests from some of the prime contractors that are interested in bidding for an extension. So we're gonna give an extension, and I will let Al tell the rest of the story.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Al Burns, Director of Procurement. As Brad said, on June sixth, we released a solicitation for the Clearwater Station, Clearwater Transit Center. We had a couple of events prior to, and I am very, very excited about the number of companies that have downloaded the solicitation. We've had over 75 companies download this solicitation, which is a lot of interest. 22 out of that 76 are general contractors or prime contractors. Right now, to be totally transparent, I think we're gonna probably receive about 4 bids. And I think the questions that have been coming in, we've received over 85 questions. So, and those are called RFIs during this procurement process. So we've received 85 RFIs. As Brad said, they asked for extensions. And I recommended to Brad that we grant that extension. And I talked to the new director of PMO, Mr. Lucian Campello in the rear of the room. And he concurred with that as well. So things are going well. A lot of good questions coming in. I think we're gonna go to the finance committee next week and let them know the status of it, and then I'll get direction from Brad of what the next steps are But I'm really motivated and super excited about the project. The companies that are looking at it, majority of them are local companies, so I'm really excited about that. I don't know if I missed anything. There is one thing that I want to bring up. The reason for the extensions is because there's some real detailed questions that are being asked, and the questions at this point, I honestly feel that they affect the pricing that we'll receive at the end of the day next week. So it's important. Our partners, CDM Smith and HDR, they've been great. They've been very responsive. Yesterday we talked to legal as well, to make sure that everything that we're doing is in compliance and that we've checked the box on pretty much everything. So, if there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them, but I'm really excited about this.
And the reason I wanted to bring it up to the committee, and I'll send an email out about this too, is it the extension of 1 week just puts us a little bit out of sync with the whole board committee structure. The finance committee is next Wednesday, and so the game plan had been that we would open bids this Friday and then in time to take it to the finance committee first before going to the board at the end of the month. Now, we're going to open bids one day after the finance committee. So we're gonna give an informational, we're gonna give an informational item to the finance committee, and then we will only be able to open and go basically right to the board. This was gonna be a discussion item at the board anyway, we were sure. So we think this is a better course of action than to delay another month till August. And I will talk to Commissioner Tom Reed, who's the chair of the Finance Committee, just to let him know also.
Okay.
This is what,
Just a week, that's it?
Yes, sir.
yeah. No, one of the vendors asked for 2 weeks, but we're gonna kind of compromise it a week. Essentially.
Chair Sanders.
Question, and thank you for that, Brad, thank you for the presentation. So my question is, if this particular proposal had 85 questions that could impact the pricing or cost of it, what are we going to use as a takeaway from that experience with those questions and moving forward with similar proposals?
Very good questions. This is a construction project. And the designer of the architect and engineering firm is CDM Smith, and they did a great job. And during a major construction when you're going vertical, I would say, it's not uncommon to get questions. What looks good on paper from an engineering perspective, the people that actually build it and actually have the skill set to build it, they look at things at a different lens. And they're just asking routine questions like, are we sure about the CCTV that we want, the countertop coverings, things of that nature. There are some other significant cost questions, but since we're still in the procurement process, I'm just gonna kind of temper what I say. But there have been questions, I don't think necessarily items were missed or anything of that nature, but these are just routine, this is routine for a construction project like this.
Okay, and the only reason why I asked is because you made a note of the amount of questions. as
Yes,
well
ma'am.
would be. Okay, all right, thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right, thanks for that info.
You're welcome.
Makes sense. All right, does anyone have any other business for them?
There wasn't an action item for the extension or anything, was there?
No.
No, okay.
You good?
We're good, yeah.
All right, thank you. In that case, our next meeting for this committee will be on August 6th, 2025 at 9 a.m. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, guys.